give me a moment's peace and take out the trash?
We pay taxes for people to come and take the garbage.
Hey, listen, Greenie, no more sneaking rides to the junkyard. Yeah, man, take a taxi when you want to go to the junkyard.
Welcome to Hot Trash Unlimited, the show where me, Joe,
and me, Caleb,
we don't go to the cinema.
We've been doing this long enough. You should have this down.
It's inconsistent enough, and circumstances change to where we seek out movies that could or could not be hot trash.
Don't even mention the seeking. Just we watch movies.
We watch movies, and who knows? They might be trashy. They might not be not.
Yeah, I think we should just abandon the premise at some point. I'm not ready to yet, but
eventually we're just going to be talking about movies of semi-nostalgic importance, maybe. Who knows?
Well, I think right now, for those of you who, because we haven't made an episode in a while, so just to remind the listener, we are no longer hunting in the world of the local theater because that wasn't producing for us. So now we're looking at categories of movies that could consist of hot trash.
We've been going back through our childhood of adaptions of young adult books, unsuccessful adaptions, something that was trying to start a franchise and horrifically failed.
Although it could be arguable with this one whether or not they wanted to. I don't think they were.
They do the thing of, and everything was solved, or was it?
Yeah. ... We'll get to the ending, but it almost is like just fully commits in a way that I think works better than like Percy Jackson, but not quite. Doesn't quite stick the landing.
We're going to be talking about a series of unfortunate events, not the show. Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, the 2004 movie.
No one knows the precise cause of the Baudelaire fire. And just like that, the Baudelaire children became the Baudelaire orphans.
I'm taking you to live with your closest relative.
And he's an actor by trade. Isn't that exciting?
Hello, hello, hello. I am your beloved Count Olaf.
Yeah, much like Bram Stoker's Dracula or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, did the author have any input? Well, in those last two cases, they were dead, so definitely not.
And in Lightning Thief's case, he was ignored.
Well, he doesn't have his name on it, but I don't think good old Daniel Handler had too much to do with this version either.
I'm gonna Google that while you do some introduction.
He isn't a producer on anything, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, this is the story, for those of you who don't know, based on the 13, I would call them smash hits. They were a little bit more
popular,
niche, but they were definitely popular.
Yeah.
Of a series of unfortunate events, the story of three children, the Baudelaires, who, after their parents tragically die in a fire, are pursued by the villainous Count Olaf in his many machinations to get their fortunes as they are shunted off from one guardian to the other. This movie adapts the first three books, The Bad Beginning, The Reptile Room, and The Wide Window, using the first book, The Bad Beginning, as kind of its framing device. It begins there, moves on to the other two books, and then wraps up its plot with the finale of Bad Beginning, which is certainly an approach.
His script got rewritten, and Sonnerfield was attached to direct, but then he left over budgetary concerns.
Okay, and he would, of course, go on to direct the show.
Mm-hmm.
As things stand, I am much more happy that he got to do the show, because I feel like because these are such short stories, you can't extend a single book into a whole movie, but I don't think condensing them like they do here works either.
Do we want to go over our little history with the books?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think you, similar to me, my dad introduced me to these through the good old book on tape.
Yeah.
And we listened to these. Me and my sister listened to these every night before bed. And I started on The Wide Window and then worked my way back.
The first one I remember seeing was a friend was reading The Hostile Hospital, and I just remember the cover was very striking. But the first one I read was the fifth one, Austere Academy, which is still my favorite.
Okay, interesting. The middle section of the books I don't like as much.
Well, because I think it starts off fairly strong, but then there is a point near the end, and I think it's kind of arguable which book it happens, but the plot becomes more and more, like the overarching plot becomes more and more important, and it never quite is as interesting as it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. But then I saw this movie. I didn't see it in theaters, But this was a big road trip movie where this one was always in the van and we'd have it on the built-in DVD player on. And I loved watching this movie over and over.
We watched it once because our whole family, our parents read us the books. We all listened to the audio tapes on trips and stuff like that. So our family got from the library, and I remember it being like a big movie night for us. And I think all of us were somewhat disappointed by it. I mean, I'm sure my parents didn't actually care that much because kids movie based off of the kids book,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I didn't see it since. Much like you saw Percy Jackson the movie multiple times, right?
Handful, not as much as this one.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen this one more, probably not like within the last 5 years, but like within the past 10 at least, which I can't say for Percy Jackson.
Yeah. So same with Percy Jackson. I saw it once and then didn't see it again.
Mhm.
And my little purist heart was upset by it.
Well, how's your purist heart feel about this one?
Oh, it's fine. Like, there's definitely a lot of strengths going on here. The visual identity of the film, Jim Carrey.
It's got it down.
Yeah. I don't know what you want to dive into first. I think there are two big negatives here that I do think kind of hold it back.
Well, let's dive into casting because you said before we're going to probably be doing a lot of comparing to the show.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible, but there are one or two points where it's hard here, especially like because the show reuses one of the actors from the movie, and so.
Yeah. Well, okay. We'll start with the titular character, Lemony Snicket. Just kidding.
The silhouette of Jude Law
and the voice.
The silhouette was so distracting, though. Once I realized this looks familiar. Oh, he looks like Jim Halpert
from The Office.
Yeah, it's just the hair looks like season 1 or 2 Jim.
No, that's definitely late season Jim. It's not a bowl cut. It's the swoop back.
I guess. Yeah. I guess because there was a certain point in the show where he had kind of long hair, not exactly a mullet, but definitely had longer hair in front and kind of coiffed back.
Yeah. That was later. That's later Office. But no, let's talk about Jim Carrey as Count Olaf.
I mean, it's Jim Carrey.
So I don't want to say he disappears into the role because like it's still a very Jim Carrey-esque performance, but like I don't see Jim Carrey really until like you said, until he starts doing the facial expressions. But like, he did a good job of making this not look like Jim Carrey. Yeah,
the makeup department definitely, and because Count Olaf has disguises, they had to do this
3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. The makeup department did a really good job on this. I think the moments that it's the most Jim Carrey are also the moments that are kind of a little distracting. There are just points where they're letting him ham it up.
Oh, like when he's just doing stuff like that.
Well, it's just like other things will be happening and then it will kind of cut back to him. The part where he's hanging out with his troupe while they cook dinner. It's fun because it's Jim Carrey and he's very talented, but also it's like, what purpose is this serving other than the fact that y'all bagged Jim Carrey and you want to make this as Jim Carrey as possible?
I think he's having a grand old time with it, though.
I don't think I've ever seen him in a movie where he's not, but
I've seen Mr. Popper's Penguins. He looks sad during that movie.
Yeah, no, he's very good casting here. He's having a lot of fun. I enjoy him for the most part, but there are those 1 or 2 moments where it doesn't quite land for me. I think especially with the Captain Sham character.
Yeah. It has the same problem that the show does with me, where they cast these extremely likable actors as this extremely terrible person who is not nearly as likable in the books.
No, but the thing I'll push back on is that, like I said, I listened to the books a lot as a kid. Tim Curry is also very likable, and he's
also voicing everyone.
Yes. But like the highlight of the Tim Curry narration is his Count Olaf voice.
All right, let's move on to the kids.
They're fine.
Yeah. There's moments where it's like, oh, they're kids.
Like the twins who are playing Sonny are twins. Like
they're babies.
Yes.
They're infants.
Props to whoever worked with them, their acting coach or whatever. I think Violet's pretty strong here. You said she was Australian?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't feel like that ever comes through in her voice.
No, never. It's a great accent.
Klaus is clearly going through puberty. And I mean, good for him. I looked up what he looks like now. He's a cute guy, but at the same time,
puberty did its job.
It can make for some awkward line deliveries and stuff. I definitely think he's not as strong as Violet.
There's a couple just like where it's like, we could have got a better read on that one.
Yeah. But I mean, I would much prefer that they cast a kid who is this age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if they're the exact ages that they're supposed to be in the story. But the fact that they are kids, because if they were teenagers, my suspension of disbelief would be broken.
Yeah.
Because this is supposed to be like kind of running on a kid logic where a kid can think through how to get through with this in a way that would never work, but is ridiculous enough to be entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Violet's the oldest at 14, which is like just on the cusp.
Yeah.
Of realm of unbelievability. And then there's a bunch of big actors in this playing all kinds of roles.
Dustin Hoffman's in it for whatever reason
too.
Yeah, Cedric Diggory, Cedric the Entertainer, who keeps coming back. Jane Lynch for a 2-second cameo.
Meryl Streep, just proving those acting abilities.
She's not bad. The problem I think is, one, it's always jarring to see Meryl Streep ham it up. It's the same thing.
There's so many levels of ham going in this, where Jim Carrey ham is one thing. It's like you kind of expect that when you get Jim Carrey, but then when you have like Meryl Streep like directly like 2 inches from his face in these long shots going just as ham, it's very weird.
It's hard because Aunt Josephine is the worst character, like in terms of the Guardians, because Count Olaf, you don't have to like him, he's just the villain.
Yeah.
And then you get Uncle Monty, who is super likable, an idiot, but super likable. Then you get to Josephine, and it's the same problem I have with her in the books. She's not evil, but she's certainly not likable.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around this person. And I do think she does try to sell out the kids at the very end. And I'm like, I just never think that there is a moment where this character works. So I can't really blame Meryl Streep for it.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine O'Hara has 2 lines.
No, not Catherine O'Hara. She's Justice Strauss.
Yeah. No, I'm jumping to her.
She gets more than 2 lines.
I'm not sure.
She has the introduction, or not my neighbor or whatever, or he is my neighbor. She has a bunch during the play while Klaus is climbing up the tower. She's having to do this like long.
She's officiating a wedding.
Yeah,
but like those are lines that were written for the character of Justice Strauss. Lines that Justice Strauss is saying because they are things she would say in the world. It's just weird, especially because I hear her and now I just think of her as the optometrist in book 4 of the show. And I'm just like, oh, you're a villain. Because she has such a good villain voice too. It's a lot like Catherine Hahn's Doc Ock voice, where it's like, you're not doing anything overtly evil. You just have
such a good villainous voice.
Yeah. Anyway, so Justice Strauss but that's more about the show than it is the movie.
That's about everybody notable, right?
I mean, I'm sure there's like 1 or 2 other big actors we're forgetting.
What's his name? Mr. Poe's actor.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mr. Poe and all the henchmen are like Jennifer Coolidge is one of the hench ladies, but it's like they don't do anything, so why bring him up?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, Craig Ferguson's there.
Doesn't say a word.
He exists. I recognize the bald-headed guy from Boogie Nights.
There's a lot of, I mean, the main thing this movie suffers from, I think the big negative is just the curse of adapting books, much less adapting 3 books into one thing, smushing it, having to move stuff around, create your own climaxes, because every single one of the books has a climax and they have to have every climax in it. But they move the first book's climax to the very end of the movie.
So they have to create a new
climax.
Which is probably, like, it's not out of line for something that would happen in the books, but it's definitely the least interesting setup.
Mm-hmm.
The Spark Notes nature of this, like, you never get a real feeling of relationship between the orphans and their
Guardians.
Thank you. I was struggling there. They set things up in the first act that don't come back till the third act, but you've had 2 complete stories in between.
Yeah.
So like Justice Strauss coming in, I could very easily see someone forgetting who she was because she was in one scene at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And like the hench people never get time to shine, which is disappointing because they're one of the most fun things about the books.
It's the problem with just crowding it. Like you have all these characters, but you only have an hour 47.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like, it's a problem. I can't deny that it's a problem, but also that's what they committed to when they started this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an axiomatic problem with the movie. If you change that, if you fix that, you do not have the movie you have.
Mm-hmm.
You have probably the TV show.
Which, yeah, so they're kind of spark noting through this, which to a degree Lightning Thief did, but Lightning Thief was also changing stuff around because it seemed like the only intent with Lightning Thief was to make that one movie.
Yeah, it's mostly keeping the same story beats. Obviously changes up one or two. The only thing it's cutting out is foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, much less egregious.
Oh yeah, I'd prefer it in some cases.
Yeah.
And like you said, this to a certain extent, I need to go back and rewatch the episodes of the TV show. This is almost like 1-to-1 with the books as 1-to-1 as the TV show is, like in the beginning, like
well,
where.
And that's the thing is, all of these stories, even in the books, are extremely rushed.
Mm-hmm. Even to the point where it's like, when the show started, I was like, is that the same actor for Violet? There's no way it is. It's been 15 years, but.
Do you think that's just because the books have such a graphic, like, notability?
I wouldn't say so much for Violet, because you could get any like taller, dark-haired girl, and I think it would work. But like down to facial structure, they have the same thing, and then like Count Olaf's a different story where he's so distinct. But even then, like it feels like this show was as influenced from the movie as it was from the books.
Well, yeah, and I think you can definitely see the DNA there, because a lot of these, it's not only actors, it's locations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that does go back to the books. Like the books, the binding on the books, the cover images, everything within the books is super noticeable. I'd say the graphic design of the book is almost as important to the success of the books than the actual story.
How long? They couldn't have been like more than 100 pages, right? Each book?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long they got towards the end, because they did get longer, but they weren't long. They were very short. But I think the books just give you such clear visions of what things look like that makes sense that there would be the connective tissue in between them.
Yeah.
I think the other problem is that the ending just doesn't work. They get to the finale.
Is it an ending?
Yeah.
Is it sequel bait? Why not both?
They get to the finale and they wrap up both Count Olaf's current scheme, trying to marry Violet, and also the mystery of who burnt down the Baudelaire's house, the thing that doesn't need to be a mystery in the first place. And
Caleb, these things don't just happen.
I mean, it was pretty obvious who did it in the books without them ever having to explain it. And like, also, this is a world about mysteries. It's a world about like there are secret organizations and there are ulterior motives and all this stuff. So I feel like having such a nice bow at the end where Count Olaf goes to jail. Oh, but wait, then he escaped. And
he also had to die 7 times.
Yeah. They find out a little bit more about VFD, but then they have to go off to their next person. So if they make a sequel, is it going to be the Vile Village? I'm not sure. Or not the Vile Village.
It would be Miserable Mill.
Yeah, the Miserable Mill. Similar locations in my mind. It's such a weird back and forth where it's like happy ending, not really. And I'm like, just let the ending suck. Like that's part of the fun of the books, is that there is like they do continue to persist and they're resourceful, but like it does take its commitment to this being a tragedy seriously.
Well, and the books are a black comedy, and the DNA is in this for like it's a black comedy in the movie too. But there's a giant Nickelodeon logo at the beginning.
Yeah.
So like,
I'd say it's a black comedy up until the like those last 5 minutes.
Yeah, where it doesn't quite commit.
Yeah. It doesn't realize what you need to wrap this up is not a big victory, it's small victories. And like, because I also think that teaches kids a valuable lesson in life where it's like, there aren't big victories. Like you can have a good year or whatever, but your next year might suck. Like, so focus on the small ones that get you to the next steps.
Or the course of 5 days or however long this movie takes place in whatever year.
Yeah. I mean, a kid reading this, like can then internalize that lesson.
Yeah.
And I think, I think that's a valuable lesson for kids to learn. So, and the movie really drops the ball on it.
Compared to your time with Percy Jackson, than that movie, how are you feeling during this one?
Oh, this is consistently entertaining is the thing. Mainly just because I think there is a lot of a lot of weight being carried by Jim Carrey, especially when we get to the reptile room and he's playing
Stefano.
It's me, he looks like John Waters, but he sounds almost like Patrick Warburton. It's me, the Italian man, Stefano.
Yes. This accent is Italian.
I will admit my attention did slip during the wide window. It just, at that point, partially because I don't like the wide window in general, and also because
that's where a lot of changes are starting to.
At that point in the movie, I'm just kind of tired. I'm like, okay. And I know we still have the wedding after this. And it's also boring. Like the whole scene where Josephine meets Captain Sham. It's just like it keeps coming back to the kids having the same expression on their face because there's nothing going on in this scene. It's just the two of them hamming it up.
Well, they're trying to do the tired thing because every adult in this series is an idiot.
Yes.
And it's kind of like it echoes how it gets in the books at a certain point where you're like, come on.
Well, it's a thing. You also get it in like slasher movies where it's like all like part of the fun for a kids series is that the kids have to go behind the parents' back and stuff. It's like in the slasher movies, the kids can't rely on like authority structures. I think it's the same thing here, but it's like also at a certain point, you're like, all of you are very well read. Like you're a scientist. You're like an ex-adventurer. You keep going into the rest.
But they have blind face syndrome.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing where it's like you can have professors who are like top of their field, but they just can't communicate to students.
Yeah. I had that college professor who was genius, terrible teacher.
Oh yeah, it's a different skill. Same here. Knowing how to properly construct a sentence is not the same as noticing that this person is clearly Jim Carrey. It's even worse in the show because, and I say this worse in a way where it's like it's a feature, not a bug, but it's like, man, there's even less disappearing into the role that Neil Patrick Harris does.
Yeah, it works in two ways. Where in the movie, hilarious seeing the extensive makeup they put Jim Carrey through. In the show, hilarious seeing how bad the disguises are. You're right. It's a feature, not a bug. It's just their different way of adapting it. Stefano in the show, I don't like as much because it's like, okay, this is just bad looking, but it works in the context. Stefano in the movie, I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yes, I would say the best part of this movie is the reptile room.
Yeah, that's my favorite book too.
I mean, it definitely is one of the stronger books. I think a lot of what makes the book so strong isn't in this though, because they're speedrunning it. And so like, I feel like this is where they get most creative with how to condense the story. It still isn't perfect, but it's definitely better than what they do with the other two books.
Yeah. Also, you're right in that they're speedrunning it. In terms of the show, though, like we keep referencing it. I'm gonna rag on the show for a second. There's some of those stories. All the episodes are 2-parters, except for the final episode. That one's a 3-parter.
I think the last one's just one.
Okay, maybe it's one.
Yeah.
Every episode's a 2-parter for the most part, though. There's some of those that they're having to stretch out really far too, where it really just depends.
Well, yeah, and what they're doing in the show, which they reference here, which is I think the main reason why this feels like they're trying to sequel bait, but you're also not sure. In the show, whenever they pad something out, they make it have to do with the secret organization VFD. Here, they keep kind of poking the bear, but they never fully commit to giving you any information about it.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things in the books where it's like this, there wasn't necessarily a full coherent thought in the books at this point.
Yeah, but that's what makes that's one of the strengths of adaptation is you're
able to go back and fix that kind of stuff.
Because I'd say just about every series we talk about, and more that we could throw in there, like Harry Potter and stuff, that we read as kids, had things that came up late in the series that could have been better set up in the originals. Yeah. That's just kind of the nature of these books that, you start out with the first book. If it does well, you'll continue on.
I was wondering how far the books were into this. The books ended in 06. So yeah, they were already pretty deep into the series at this point.
Yeah. And not to get too mean to the books, because I don't think they end well, but once you get to like Grim Grotto, there's no more information given. Like,
yeah.
Those books really fall off.
Well, they get so much darker too.
Do you think this movie, like, but beyond the beyond Jim Carrey hamming it up, do you think this movie has good humor?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Again, the black humor of just like, you got to be kidding me of stuff like when everything going wrong in the wide window house. It's like, oh, it's everything Josephine said before, and even the Violet's like, come on, like this is ridiculous. Sunny, they're fun with her subtitles they have to do. Or just, it's like, someone's from Crazy Town is a very like kiddish joke, and it's like, oh wait, she's the mayor of Crazy Town. I'm like, okay, you went the extra step to make it funnier. I wish the troop was funnier.
I just wish I had stuff to do. What do they do?
Well, you see the pale-faced ladies introduce the play, and they're in Lake Lacrimose to be there.
Yeah.
The man of indeterminate gender is there to be confusing.
Who's even the hinge person? Is it the hook-handed man? Do they keep that the same for the reptile room?
Yes.
Okay. Because like, I don't think he's ever even center of frame in that in that section of the movie.
No, he's not. He's always off to the side, and then Baldy never does anything.
You can see him play around like with the backstage set and stuff. There's some physical comedy there. I feel like the narration isn't as funny as I wish it was. I don't know if that's necessarily just because it's not well incorporated, or if it all just feels kind of samey after a while.
Yeah, it's kind of a samey thing. Where is the first time he like it really takes you out of the movie for a second, when not aside from the beginning, is when the incredibly deadly viper attacks Sunny, or when it first jumps out to attack.
Yeah, it does that, and then it does it once during Wide Window.
Yeah, where Lemony Snicket as a character is like just as important as everybody else, which the TV show does amazingly.
Yeah, and the books do through, I'd say, mainly through the dedications.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely, out of all the adaptations, the one where Lemony Snicket feels the least present.
Mm-hmm.
I will also say this has a...
Well, and I think that's also, it's like, is it because they weren't greenlit for a sequel immediately? Did they know if they were going to have Lemony Snicket be a character or just a narrator?
Yeah. Well, and you could easily adapt these with Lemony Snicket never being a character. That would have been fine.
Yeah. It's just how much of the book's DNA do you want to be in the movie? And I think they did a good job for the most part. This is like, it really is a thing of it's being held back just by being a movie, which, I mean, TV, it was a much different era of TV. This wouldn't have gotten greenlit.
Well, and even the TV show isn't perfect in how it adapts things. Like, it's just, these are books and they're structured to be books.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to adapt them outside of it. I think both this and the TV show do a good job. Not a good enough job to get obnoxious little Caleb on board, but a good enough job for adult Caleb to be fine with it.
Mm-hmm. It's just missing that like extra step to really push through all the way.
I do want to say one of the areas that the comedy does work, and I'd say just in general the movie works, is the cinematography. Emmanuel Lubezki is the cinematographer, and he's like he did Children of Men and Gravity and The Revenant. Okay. He's like a legit, like this director is like a director for hire. Mm-hmm. This cinematographer is a professional.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a lot, especially, I don't think it's the strongest scene in the movie, but if you go back and you watch the scene where they're stuck on the train tracks, just the slow reveal of everything is shot so well with how the camera is panning, and then it like slides over and you can see the glass bottle shaking and stuff.
I like all the shots in the house.
Yeah.
At Count Olaf's house when they're going through and getting the tour.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cool personality to the cinematography that helps a lot.
Yeah, this movie nails just about everything except for like story beats, really.
Yeah, it nails what it can.
Mm-hmm. It's the limitations of its form.
You know what? It feels like if they were to make a stage adaptation, this is probably what they would do.
Yeah.
And I can kind of cut
a play within a play.
Yeah, I think I can kind of cut some slack thinking about those terms. Because when I think about like stage adaptations, I don't think my mind doesn't go to they need to be as strictly adherent. And I think that's just what I should have gotten through my head as a kid, was like strictly coherent doesn't mean like good.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the best adaptations of things I like today, like The Sandman. faithful where it can be, but is very ready to just cut, trim, and reshape to make more sense in both a different time period and a different medium. And I'm glad that I've matured to the point where I no longer see that as a problem. And I think that's what this movie's trying to do.
So what are you going to rate it?
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, this isn't hot trash. This is a perfectly fine movie.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
I will say there's no reason for me to ever go back and rewatch this with the TV show.
That's true.
I would say the TV show is better than the books. Also,
that's also true.
It nails down an ending. But yeah, like not bad at all.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for joining in on our discussion today. If you have a movie that you think we would be able to get some interesting conversation out of, that's possibly hot trash, you can send that over to us, hottrashunlimited@gmail.com, or put it into a review. If you give us a review, not only is that a good way to get in touch with us, but that also lets other people get recommended our podcast. Everything is based off of the algorithms, and the algorithms are based off of the reviews. So go check that out. And thank you for listening. Hey, Joe, what lessons did we learn today?
Always have an anchor nearby if your house happens to be built on the edge of a cliff with a very interesting code of foundational conduct it has to meet.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Just in case.